The winter sunshine islands of the Caribbean, are they at last becoming bargain destinations? A weekend break in Ireland, and how far does the money go these days? Barbados and Dublin are two filmed reports in this week's holiday programme. Hello and welcome to another series of the holiday programme, and if it isn't too late, a Happy New Year from all of us. We're back for the next 10 weeks with reports from holiday destinations at home and abroad, and with news of the holiday scene. With me in the studio once again is John Carter. He's been doing plenty of travelling, and so is Anne Gregg, who's new to this programme but certainly not to television. Well, this year as never before, you're going to need advice about holidays. The way things are, we're all going to be searching for value for money. The tour companies, optimistic as always, are offering more holidays than they did last year, but they're likely to be chasing fewer customers. Now, that will mean bargains for people who are prepared to risk booking late. We've seen it happen before, it's happening now in respect of some winter and spring holidays, and it will happen again. But that's something we'll be keeping an eye on and telling you about as the weeks go by. Think of winter sunshine and you think of the Caribbean, those islands in the tropical sun that have attracted the British for years. The cost of holidays there has always been on the high side, mainly because the islands are so very far away. But as bigger aircraft come into service and fares come down to fill those empty seats, is there a chance that the Caribbean, particularly Barbados, will become a destination for bargain holiday makers? To find out, Anne Gregg flew down there.
Barbados may be a small island, only 21 miles by 14, but there are plenty of beaches to go round, all the way round. In November, the temperature is in the 80s Fahrenheit, and for many, this is the stuff of dreams, the holiday haunt of the rich when the rawness of a British winter begins to snap at their heels. A lukewarm sea, coral sand, palm trees, and the promise of lazy days spent swimming and sunbathing when the weather back home is at its nastiest. "10 hours flying from London is quite a journey for us, whereas North Americans are almost on the doorstep, and they've been responsible for a lot of development on the West Coast in recent years. One of the things that's now bringing Barbados more within reach for the British holidaymaker is self-catering, in apartments within a central complex like this one at the Sandridge, near Speightstown. In every other aspect, it's just like a hotel. It has a perfect tropical setting right on the beach, and there's a restaurant, bar, and a large freshwater pool. If you're thinking of bringing a family, there's a 90% reduction for children under 2, but 2 to 12-year-olds merit only a 10% drop on the full price, even though they still have to share with you. Each apartment has a fully equipped kitchen, and it's cleaned and serviced every day just as hotels are. There's plenty of space for lounging in should the odd tropical downpour send you indoors, and the sofas convert to 2 single beds at night. The bedroom itself is air-conditioned and thickly carpeted. You could say home-from-home comfort, though perhaps carpet may not be such a bright idea in the tropics, where insects look for just this kind of cosy cover. As a holiday base, was Barbados turning out to be what most people expected?
Absolutely. I've always wanted to come here. It's been an ambition for years that I come here, and when I finally made it, it was exactly as I thought it would be.
Well, this time of the year, we wanted the sun guaranteed, and we thought you know, constant 80 to 85 degrees temperature here. That's what we wanted.
The apartments, how do you feel about them? Are they adequate?
They are exactly what we expected from the brochure, actually. Yes, they've got everything we need. They're well stocked with cutlery, plates, that kind of thing for the self-catering, and comfortable chairs and all this kind of thing. Balcony, yes, it's very nice.
What about the situation of the hotel itself?
Well, it's perfect. Right on the beach, sea view, all the palms, all this kind of thing, yes.
And what's the beach like?
Fine, as long as you avoid the cobblers, the sea urchins. Just don't get them in your feet. But yes, it's lovely. Hot, sand, sea. What more could you ask?
Well, food. You'll find the apartment restaurant handy when you don't want to cook for yourself, or when you feel like a cool drink and you don't want to stray too far from your sunbed. They get booked up at the crack of dawn here, just as they do everywhere else. In temperatures like these, with often high humidity, your thirst's going to take a bit of quenching. Watch the rum punches. Both they and the home-brewed beer have plenty of body to them. Prices of both can double depending on where you drink them, from 40p to almost £1. The cost of eating out can vary enormously too. Snack meals are cheap, but you'd be wise to reckon on £5 a head without wine for a 3-course dinner. The American influence is strong, and most of the fish seems to come deep-fried in breadcrumbs. But then the Caribbean isn't famous for its food. Another reason, perhaps, for cooking yourself. How much self-catering have you done?
I've cooked a couple of breakfasts and one evening meal, but the rest of the time we've eaten out.
What are the prices like?
We've been to 2 standards. We went to the equivalent of our Wimpy bar, which was very cheap, very quick and very clean. And we've eaten in the apartments restaurant, which again, it was very quick and good food, good value for money.
Where have you been buying your food?
In the local supermarket. It's plenty of variety, the same as at home, steak, chicken, mince, that type of thing.
In fact, it's very much like any supermarket anywhere, with the usual array of convenience foods and basic groceries, which, by the way, cost less than they do at home, particularly sugar, as it's grown just down the road. There's also a good selection of wines, spirits and soft drinks. But for shopping Barbados style, you'll have to go elsewhere. If you feel like being a bit more adventurous with your cooking, then there are all the unusual fruits and vegetables here in the market for you to try. Some of the shapes may look a bit odd to you, but ask the stallholders and they might even tell you how to cook them. There are the familiar things too, salad ingredients that you'd find at home. The thing to remember is that any local produce is bound to be that much cheaper. Bargaining will always bring a reduction, but the people are poor, and their produce really is worth the asking price to us. There's surprisingly little fishing. The main catch is landed at Oystons, a 40-minute bus ride from the Sandridge apartments, and it's worth the trip. Flying fish are plentiful, tasty and inexpensive, sometimes as many as 8 or 9 for about 25p. And there's the bigger dolphin fish, which everyone hastens to point out is not a porpoise, and so there's no danger of your eating flipper. A mile or two back along the coast is Bridgetown, the island's rather cramped capital. Shabby, but with a certain charm. 15 years after independence, British rule is still remembered, and tourists are made to feel welcome. A statue of Nelson commemorates his visit to the island shortly before the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. And the rather church-like government offices have stained glass windows of British sovereigns from James I to Victoria. The department stores, even when they're in old buildings, are havens of air conditioning, and no doubt trade on the fact that a lot of their customers probably only come in to get out of the heat. Duty-free signs are everywhere, because Bridgetown is a free port. But remember, your limit for goods other than drink, cigarettes and perfume is only £28. And you need to be pretty sure of the value of the same things back in the UK. Electrical equipment, for instance, isn't always the most up-to-date. There are several ways of getting out and about, away from Bridgetown and the more crowded West Coast areas. You can take a bus or hire a moke to go exploring. Even in the off-season, it's really far too hot to lie in the sun for very long. And anyway, this is the real Barbados. Sugarcane as high as an elephant's eye. A moke is £10 a day or £60 a week, and the driving is easy. There aren't many other cars on the road. There aren't many signposts either, so you need a good map. But the East Coast is by far the more attractive. Its Atlantic rollers, however, make swimming dangerous. you prefer your fun more organised, there are daily cruises aboard the Jolly Roger, long a favourite with tourists. It's well named, for with unlimited drink flowing for some 5 hours, most of the passengers are incredibly jolly by the time they stagger off. In fact, such a good time is had by all that a fair number of them immediately book up for another trip. It's clearly a bargain at £8 a head, with a substantial lunch of barbecued steak and lots of delicious platters of salad on the side. And then there's the barrel of non-stop rum punch, all in. Luckily, there isn't much heave and swell. If you have the head for it after this, you can go dancing in the evening too and enjoy steel bands and the backbending limbo. Barbados certainly has rhythm, and it seems to be in tune with what many people are after in a winter sun holiday. Do you think it's value for money as a holiday overall?
Definitely, yes. Absolutely. I'm sure we could have paid as much or nearly as much and gone to the Med and not enjoyed ourselves half as much and never fulfilled the ambition either.
Very good value for money, actually. The car hire was very reasonable, and the tours seem to be reasonably priced also.
So on the whole, you think it was a worthwhile idea?
Oh, definitely, yes. I think I'd consider coming here again.
So if you've always dreamed of a winter holiday in the West Indies, perhaps self-catering is the way to make it possible in 1981. In many ways, Barbados is a good choice. It's still the most British of islands in the sun. The people are friendlier than most others in the Caribbean, and there's a lot to remind you of home. Then again, there's a lot to help you forget it.
And Greg and the Caribbean sunshine. Well, that holiday in Barbados at Sandbridge Apartments is with Laker, and the prices start at £358 for 2 weeks. Now, that's based on 2 people sharing a 1-bedroom apartment and self-catering. The prices rise by around half as much again in high season. That's February, March and April, and the flights are from Gatwick on a DC-10. Well, does self-catering bring Barbados within a budget holiday bracket? Here's Anne Gregg again.
Well, I wish somebody would come up with a new name for self-catering holidays. The term always conjures up to me visions of having to spend the whole time in the kitchen, and that's a prospect no one fancies much, even when we
expected to go in 1981. To meet this demand, there are now more transatlantic flights to more American cities than ever before. John Carter flew to Boston last autumn to put together his own package holiday in New England.
A city of old-fashioned and narrow streets inhabited by people with old-fashioned and narrow minds. If that's your opinion, and I'll confess it used to be mine, then you need to know that Boston has changed considerably in recent years. The winds of change and progress are even ruffling the foliage of sedate Beacon Hill. But in changing and growing, it hasn't entirely swept away its past.
The city of Boston holds many surprises, not the least of which are the number of very old buildings and places that still exist in its very heart. We tend to think of American cities in terms of modern skyscrapers, but in Boston, the demands of the developer and the city planner have had to defer to the requirements of history. This, for instance, is Boston Common, 48 acres that were set aside as common pasturage and a training ground and bought by the city in 1634. Appropriately, it's the starting point of a fascinating tour. It's called the Freedom Trail, and the idea is that you literally follow a thin red line that leads you through 1.5 miles of Boston streets, and in doing so, takes you back in time, back to the turbulent birth of America's independence. Now, as a visitor from Britain, you could be, shall we say, embarrassed at these reminders of that old colonial unpleasantness. But look at it this way. It's as much a part of our history as it is of theirs.
The new State House, dating from 1795, is the first stop along the trail, your first realization that Boston packs plenty of history. There's the home of Paul Revere. There's a church whose treasures include a pulpit donated by James II and cushions from Queen Anne. There's the site of America's first public school, and there's the old State House, built in 1712.
Also along this Freedom Trail, a circle of cobblestones marks the location of the Boston Massacre of 1770. As massacres go, it wasn't up to much. Just 5 colonists were killed by British redcoats. But when you do come here to pay your respects, watch out that the Boston traffic doesn't even up the score.
Farther along the Red Line Freedom Trail, and most incongruous against a backdrop of skyscrapers, is Faneuil Hall, given to Boston in 1742 by Peter Faneuil, the topmost merchant in all the town, as a combination meeting place and public market. Right alongside is a skillful renovation of old warehouses into shops and restaurants that shows again that Boston still has style. To find an American city that actually encourages you to walk through its heart is unusual enough, and when that red line leads you here, you can combine your historical sightseeing with some shopping. It's at this point between ourselves that a lot of people forsake the Freedom Trail. It's hard to resist the appeal of the various stalls, harder still to pass by the opportunity for refreshment.
Why don't you give me one of the fruit cups too?
Yeah, it's $2.50.
I'll see, I'll give you that. Okay. Okay.
$4.50, please. Thank you, Larry.
The city has a number of good quality hotels, and the Sheraton is right in the center of things. Its main disadvantage is its size. Try checking in or out when 1,000 convention delegates are there. But it's comfortable and offers a bewildering range of facilities as only American hotels can. The large air-conditioned bedrooms have private bathrooms and color television sets. Sunday brunch in the main restaurant is part of a special weekend deal for just £39 per person. For that, you get 2 nights in what the hotel itself calls a deluxe oversized room. The price is based on 2 people sharing, by the way, and you also get discount shopping coupons and a 3-hour sightseeing bus tour. Interesting though Boston is, there's little point in flying all the way across the Atlantic and not seeing something of the New England states. It's easy enough to do this, either by hiring a car and driving yourself, or taking one of the many tours offered by local coach operators. The one we chose was a 3-day trip that takes you north from Boston, through Massachusetts, and into New Hampshire and Maine.
Okay, we're now coming into the White Mountains region. This is the most beautiful region of New Hampshire. Now, the White Mountains, they cover an area of about 50 square
It's a
miles.
virtual certainty that your fellow passengers will all be Americans on holiday like you. So there are no language problems. Well, not too many. But you'll find that, just like coach tours in Britain, these tend to attract the middle-aged and elderly. This is particularly so in autumn, what Americans call the fall, when visitors by the thousand flock to see the colors. The itinerary, the Americans call it the schedule, is an easy one, reflecting the requirements of that older generation. There are plenty of stops along the way to admire the assorted beauties of nature. On the first day, lunch is a picnic affair, and you couldn't wish for a finer setting. When autumn breaks into colour, the New England landscape is breathtaking. The wooded hillsides overwhelm the eyes and the senses with their grades and shades of greens and browns, with unbelievably brilliant reds and golds. And you know, just when you think you've seen the best of it, it gets even better. A change of transport at North Conway, a cable railway that carries visitors to the top of Mount Cranmore. The cost of this ride is included in the price of the coach tour. That, by the way, is £86 per person for the 3 days. It includes all your meals, accommodation and excursions. A point to bear in mind about this cable railway system is that it doesn't stop. So you have to get smartly on and off the trolleys, with a helping hand from the attendants. Because of this, and because it's pretty chilly at the summit and during the ride, a lot of the coach tour customers didn't take the trip, which is a pity because they missed a fine view of the White Mountains, of Mount Washington and the Presidential Range. Though it looks like a stage set, it is the town of Bethel in the state of Maine. You spend 2 nights on this tour at the Bethel Inn and Country Club. It reflects very much the character of the little town itself, with its main building and 5 guest houses built in traditional colonial style. The accommodation's first class, with bedrooms decorated and furnished to match the style and age of the building, but with up-to-date private bathrooms and very efficient central heating. That central heating and open log fires are necessary, for autumn evenings and nights can be bitterly cold in this part of the world.
Not nearly as beautiful as the coast, not nearly.
The atmosphere at the Bethel Inn was friendly and informal, especially at dinner, when most of the group prepared and were prepared nursery fashion for the messy business of eating lobster.
Is everyone all set then?
Though there's a choice of menu at dinner, most people decided on lobster. How many coach touring holidays in Europe offer you lobster, I wonder? And how many use hotels of such high quality as this? Though the Bethel Inn may not be the type of hotel you'd immediately associate with America, there are very many like it in New England, unexpected but pleasantly familiar to any visitor from Old England. Appropriately, the final day of the tour takes in the coast of Maine. After lunch at a place called Kennebunkport, it's a short run to Perkins Cove for a trip out to sea. Perkins Cove is typical of the small harbour communities to be found along this rugged shore, a delightful spot. Incidentally, the price of this sea trip is also included in the cost of the tour, and there's a guide on board to make sure you get the most from your maritime experience.
Around us, all of these are lobster caught buoys, and each one marks where a trap is. Each one is attached to a line, and then the lobster trap sits right on the bottom of the ocean.
There's always something fascinating about watching other people fishing, and to see a professional at work is quite an education.
But once again, Paul has to check each one of them.
Oh, look at that, huh? That's interesting. Oh, my God. And what did you call 5, I think?
Checks on the inside of the tail. This one looks like a keeper, so what Paul will do now is put bands on the...
The reason for binding the claws, according to the guide, is that lobsters are cannibals and would otherwise eat each other in captivity, and that would never do. We have to eat them.
Just a little bit over the minimum, so it's fine. This is the 5-inch maximum limit. If it were over that in Maine, it'd have to go back.
For all its recent popularity as a pre-packaged holiday destination, America's very well geared up to meet the needs of individual, independent visitors. People who are quite happy to assemble for themselves the style of holiday they want. A few days in Boston and a coach tour through the breathtaking beauty of the northeastern countryside is just one combination that might appeal. There are others, of course, but it isn't until you actually get there that you realize how much there is to do and to see in historic New England.
John Carter among the falling leaves of New England. As for getting there, the return flight between Heathrow and Boston costs with British Airways or TWA from £185 return. Aware, Spain has had its problems recently and has fallen somewhat from favour. So what are its prospects for 1981? To find out, we join John Carter on the Costa del Sol.
If you'd have come to this particular part of Spain 20-odd years ago, you'd have discovered an unspoiled, tiny fishing village. Well, it's still here, and it's still called Torremolinos. But now modern hotels dominate its beach and its promenade. Only the name's the same, and nothing could more dramatically demonstrate the changes that have taken place in Spain in a single generation. But there have been more recent changes, too. With the death of General Franco half a dozen years ago, a new Spain emerged, one whose hotels couldn't provide the old low-price service as wages soared to meet inflation. A Spain where hotel workers went on strike, where hotel guests found themselves having to serve themselves. So many thousands of holidaymakers deserted Spain. They went off to other countries.
But time's passed and maybe they're ready to return. If so, what are places like the Costa del Sol doing to persuade them, to persuade us to come back? And are those efforts succeeding? To find out, we've come first to Mijas, a resort village just a few miles inland, not far from Torremolinos. The Mijas Hotel was as much affected by those past upheavals as any other, but the owners decided to increase prices in line with inflation, hoping their regular guests would remain faithful. I asked manager Mr. Peter Bartman if this had worked.
Since we took over the hotel, this hotel at St. Mijas in '77, we steadily increased service and standard. But if you increase service and standard, it's a question of money. If you also had to increase prices, we increased our prices honestly every year by approximately 20%. But this price increase has been accepted by our customers, because every year the customer arrived and he find a more increased standard of service and quality, what the customer accept.
We'll get back to that question of service and quality in a moment. Naturally, any hotel would claim the guests are getting more for their extra money. But what do the guests think? The Dunbar family have been coming to Spain for several years. How do they find it here?
Well, we've seen a lot of change. I mean, we saw the prices go up substantially after the 73, 74 economic problems. And now we've seen them sort of come back and normalize, and this has become sort of very good value for money.
In the sense of the service that you get in the hotels, in a hotel like this one, how did things change?
I don't think they've changed at all. We find the service here absolutely excellent. The people are very friendly, very cheerful, very happy, and we get everything we want without any problems at all. And I think it hasn't changed since we first came.
It's clear at a glance that the Hotel Mijas is spending a fair portion of its income on maintaining the quality of its building. The public rooms are decorated and furnished to the highest standards. Its 106 bedrooms reflect that same high quality, as do the bathrooms that go with them. You're almost engulfed by the tiles. It's all very smart. What you have to bear in mind about the Mijas is that it's a 3-star hotel, and a couple of weeks here with one of the British tour companies will cost around £320 a head, half board. So much for quality. Now, how about service? The Dunbar family and other guests reckon the hotel was up to the mark in this respect. I think there'd probably have been more waiters around in the old days, but on balance, the Mijas Hotel seems to have got it right. You pay more than you used to, but standards have been pretty well maintained.
Most of the hotels hereabouts, the big ones down on the beach, couldn't take the option of continuing to provide the old standard of service. They had to go along the other route. They kept their wage bills level by sacrificing staff, but that meant lowering the standard of service. But they figured to make up for that by providing a whole range of extra things to do. This, by the way, is the Hotel Principe Sol, and it's typical of most in Torremolinos. Its high-rise blocks can take over 1,000 guests when it's full. That obviously imposes a strain on the sporting facilities. You'll probably have to wait your turn for the tennis court, for example, especially when you realise that it's all free. The tennis and the water sports, the table tennis, the archery, and so on. Its only resemblance to the Mijas Hotel is that it, too, is a 3-star establishment. A couple of weeks here on the same half-board terms will cost around £280. Mr. Huckle, a guest at the Principe Sol, has been coming to Spain for several years. How does the Spain of today compare with that of the past?
Oh, it's changed a great deal today. A few years ago, when we first came to Spain, which is 1962 actually, the Spanish were actually falling over backwards, you know, to try and get your business, and you know, they were doing everything they could for you. Although today they're still very good. They're not quite as keen as they used to be, but the money seems to come easier to them. Still good service in the hotels, but now you have to do more for yourself. Breakfast time, it's help yourself. Lunch time, the first course is help yourself. Dinner time, the first course is help yourself. And waiter service afterwards, but...
Doesn't that spoil the holiday?
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, for me, it's better.
Self-service this may be, but judging by what we saw and by the comments of very many guests, it's accepted as part of the new system, designed to keep down the hotel's overheads and consequently the cost of holidays here. Certainly there were no complaints about the quantity of food available. Like other large resorts in Spain, Torremolinos was badly affected when tourism slumped in the wake of industrial troubles and inflation. Even now, the resort has problems. When we were there last July, something like half the hotel rooms were empty. But what does the president of the local tourist board think of the situation?
I am happy with the way the things are now. And I was happy where the things they were before. I was probably not quite happy where the things were about 2 years or 1 year ago. And now we are all, I think, much more mature. And this will not mean that we will not have our fights on the future, but it will be fights around the table, not fights that will affect at all the tourism, because we all have learned that the tourists, the people that come here for a holiday, they are the ones that they don't have to suffer at all.
Okay. But having suffered, very many tourists have decided to make the move right away from hotel-based holidays and cater entirely for themselves in villas and apartments. In this respect, Spain has strong appeal, for in spite of its inflation, British tourists find market prices comparatively low. Fruit and vegetables are particularly cheap. As for the fish, well, it couldn't be fresher and is a real bargain. Whatever the future holds in terms of tourism, Spain can never be the same again. Set aside the nostalgia, though, because that cheap destination where the waiters fell over themselves to serve you and the bars stayed open until the last customers had left, well, that's gone for good. Today, you have to compare Spain with the other countries that seek your custom, with Greece and Portugal, with Italy and France, even the USA. Last summer, between 3 and 3.5 million Britons took their holidays along the Costa del Sol and in other resort areas. Now that figure's well below what it used to be in the late 60s, the best of the old days. But we are gradually going back to the costas. Maybe it's because, having tried those other countries, we've discovered that our money does go farther in Spain despite their inflation. And in 1981, that's going to be a prime consideration.
On the street, I was talking to a man. He said there's so much, but there's nothing, man, that I don't understand. You shouldn't worry, I said, that ain't no crime.
years ago, the tourist industry here had to deal with the newly militant trade unions, rapidly rising overheads, and the unemployment that resulted. Having made some basic mistakes then, Spain still has a long way to go to recover lost ground and get it right this time.
You need direction, yeah, you need a name. When you stand at the crossroads, every highway looks the same. After a while, you get to recognize the signs. So if you get it wrong, you get it right next time.
John Carter among the bright lights of Torremolinos. Now, in that film, the point was made that hotels have had to cope with inflation and rising wages, and no matter how they set about it, holiday costs have risen in recent years. But price increases aren't inevitable, as we've discovered from a search through the brochures. Indeed, this year, many holidays actually cost less than their 1980 equivalents. A bargain in any terms, but one which is even more startling when you consider that inflation here is currently running at some 15%. Here's John Carter again.
As far as Spain's concerned, the main reason for lower prices, as I mentioned in the film, is that business wasn't too good last year, not only from Britain, but also from Germany and Scandinavia. So the Spanish hotels were eager to do business with British companies and offered very good rates, in some cases the same or lower than 1980. Thus, one Cosmos holiday to Torremolinos will cost £239 next August, compared with £269 in 1980. That's £30 off a 2-week deal. A Horizon package to Tenerife has fallen to £293. That's £42 less than the equivalent fortnight last April. And the price of one Thompson holiday to Mallorca in June is down to £205, a saving of £23.
Of holiday style, a total contrast to the large, high-rise establishments of the Costa del Sol. We're travelling now to the island of Corsica, where holidays tend to be on a smaller, more intimate scale, with small hotels to match. On the west coast of the island is the tiny village of Porto, and it's from there that Anne Gregg reports.
Finding corners of the world that are still unspoilt is rather like winkling out wild strawberries. They do exist, but you need to know where to look. The land around the Gulf of Porto is a part of Corsica that the Corsicans themselves regard as something special, because it falls within the island's regional park and includes a rugged coastline of isolated creeks and coves where even in June there's plenty of elbow room. The beaches range from sandy to pebble to stony, like the one at Porto itself. Package holidays aren't always based in big resorts or in big hotels. A number of tour operators now will book you into small places like Porto and in small family-run hotels. One of these is the Mediterranean, which offers a choice of full board or half board. And the sea really is only a few minutes' walk away. Most of the rooms have balconies and are simply furnished. There's not a lot of space, but what there is well planned and perfectly adequate. The space is all on the outside. But what the Mediterranean doesn't offer are the frills. There's no organised entertainment, so in the evening the main event is dinner on the terrace. Corsican wines are very drinkable and cheap too, but the food isn't particularly Corsican. In fact, the menu is fairly straightforward, with fish or grilled meat generally as the main course. If you're on half-board, of course, you have other options, and Porto is well stocked with restaurants. Some are good, some are disappointing, but all of them will cost you around £4 to £5 a head without wine. But how satisfied were people with standards at the Mediterranean?
I always found the first starters, the soups, etc., very nice, but when you got actually to the main course, it was a bit of a disappointment. I mean, we had hamburgers and chops and things like that. I mean, it was all quite eatable. It was quite nice, but it wasn't anything particularly special.
Tony, the very big hotels and the big resorts are often criticised as being impersonal. What do you feel about the Mediterranean compared with that kind of place?
Well, it's definitely the reverse. It's a smaller hotel. There are not so many people staying here, really. I imagine there's about 60, and one's been able to gather friendships through the time that we've been here, and also friendship with the staff, who are very helpful and cooperative, and they do anything that almost that we ask them to. You know?
Tom, I think you've been on other package holidays. How would you compare it to the kind of facilities and hotel and so on you get elsewhere?
Well, I like this hotel because it's a traditionally styled hotel, unlike the tower blocks which you find on the Spanish coastline. The people are local and they serve you in more or less traditional style. I mean, everything's clean and basic as you would expect to find. Every room has a little balcony looking over the sea, and it's very friendly service.
Apart from swimming, windsurfing or messing about in pedalos, there's not a lot to do in a quiet place like this. And if you're the kind of person who prefers things to be happening all the time, then it may not be quite your speed. The charm of Porto is that it's quite difficult to get at. So in 50 years, it's been very little developed. Originally, it wasn't even a village. It was just a scattering of fishermen's cottages around the estuary. The atmosphere is probably more rural than you'd find in most resorts, and people enjoy the countryside as much as the beach. But it is small, and so you'll want to get out of it to see more. And as public transport is, well, virtually non-existent, that means you've got to be prepared to hire a car for a couple of days, or perhaps a moped if you can manage it. Hiring one isn't expensive. When we were there, these cost about £5 a day, and there were lighter machines at just over £2.50. You don't need a UK licence, but you'd be silly to set off on a bike like this without ever having had a go on one before. Corsican roads aren't the kind to practice on. If there are two of you, it's worth bearing in mind that you can hire a small car for less than the price of 2 mopeds. They start at £9. Whether you take the high road or the low road, it's bound to be a zigzag of hairpin bends with often a sheer drop on one side and blind corners, so there are plenty of thrills, but speeding is definitely out. And you soon get used to the fact that every journey takes you twice as long as you think it will from the map. But the marvellous thing is you don't have to go far to find yourself in some of the most glorious mountain country you could wish to see. This cafe, clinging by its fingernails to the hillside, is only 3 miles from Porto, in the picturesque village of Otta, typical of so many in Corsica. The most famous Corsican of them all, the Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, once said that he could recognize his island with his eyes closed because of the smell of the maki. This is the maki, this tangle of shrubs and undergrowth that you find all over the Mediterranean, of course, but in Corsica there's quite a lot of it. In fact, in places it goes right up to the top of the mountains. And the smell of it really is something, especially in the evenings. It's a mixture of sort of wild thyme and rosemary and fennel and lots of others that you won't even recognize. There are also thistles and thorn bushes, of course, which make it rather painful to walk through, but you don't have to. There are lots of paths around it, and this really is walking country. With that in mind, it's as well to come prepared with good hiking shoes, because then you can really get into the back country and explore the river valleys. There's a footpath that follows the river here, which has been a shortcut to the old mountain township of Avisa for centuries. One thing you certainly don't need to worry about in Corsica is the drinking water, for it comes from these crystal clear mountain streams. If you're keen on fishing, bring a rod. You can angle for trout any time from March to September, and there are no fees. This particular beauty spot is a favourite for picnickers too, and because the river is so shallow and clean, it's safe for swimming in, though you might have to keep going round in circles. Buying picnic food, of course, is no problem. With a stick of French bread, some local cheese and a bottle of wine, what more could you ask for in a setting like this? Anyone who is a lover of nature or history will find this territory right up their street, or perhaps I should say mountain track. How does this compare, Tony, with other places you've been?
Oh, I think very favourably. I think as a island, it's magnificent. It's unspoilt. It's not commercialised really, and I think it's absolutely delightful. Wherever one looks, you get this, this incredible backdrop, and it's just scenically wonderful. I think it's marvellous.
It's a pleasant place, and there's a lot to do besides lie on the beach, which you can do if you prefer that. The locals are very friendly. The beach isn't too crowded. The sea's warm. Pleasant little village.
If you prefer simple things and a package holiday that's very different from the kind you'd get in a big resort, then Porto is for you. The pace is gentle, you have to make your own fun, and if you like doing nothing, then these are very beautiful surroundings to do nothing in. Corsica is almost like a chunk of the Alps dropped into the Mediterranean. The island is a part of France, yet it's not France, and it doesn't have a French feel. It has a character all of its own. And unlike many other unspoilt corners, Porto is probably going to stay much the way it is for some time to come.
And Greg getting away from it all in Porto, Corsica. The particular holiday we looked at is by Small World, and it's at the Hotel Mediterranee. It costs from £269 to £338 for 2 weeks on half-board terms. Incidentally...
24 hours to think it over.
Well, it's a good way to compare to the...
One thing apparently unknown to Treasury forecasters is the inverse law of the holiday. It appears that the worse the recession and the higher the unemployment figures, the more people want to get away from it all.
All that, combined with an appalling summer, meant that 1980 was the best season ever for the package tour operators. So much so that some companies this year are increasing the number of holidays that they're offering by up to 20%. And places like Mallorca are being heavily favoured this summer to face the brunt of that mass exodus. Competition, of course, between the tour companies will be keener than ever before. But some people doubt that all those extra holidays will get sold.
One of the most attractive thoughts is the price. Some companies have pegged the cost of the holidays. Others are charging only 5% more. Against the rate of inflation, this still means that the 1981 package holidays will be cheaper than ever before. A spring holiday for a family of 3 on full board staying in Mallorca will cost around £400 for 2 weeks. January is the peak selling month for holidays, but it's too early to gauge exactly how sales are going with the extra capacity.
Good afternoon, Horizon Reservations. 9:03.
Horizon, though, say that they have already sold over 50% of their package holidays. But retailers in the trade are less optimistic about another bumper year. The question everyone is asking is, where will all those extra holiday makers come from?
The increase in package holidays abroad has increased something in the region of 600,000 holidays. But when you look at the marketplace we have, there are 5 million approximately people who take package holidays. There's 5 million people who do their own thing who go abroad. And on top of that, there's another 30 million people who take holidays in this country. So in those terms, an extra 500,000 or 600,000 holidays doesn't seem to be over-ambitious.
There'll be no shortage of planes. Most major tour operators now have their own airlines with the new and efficient 737s. But they will all be increasing their fleets with new planes for this season. Unless they can sell those 6 million seats, they could face some heavy losses.
Good to see you again.
How things?
Very fine indeed.
Good.
Fine. Please, have a seat.
Thank you.
As far as hotels are concerned, tour operators have taken advantage of the poor season that the Germans and Swedes had in 1980.
As usual.
We're always very busy. We're looking for more beds in your hotels. We found
The meetings are cordial, but the Spanish guard their margins jealously.
Possibility of giving you some extra beds, but you know that these beds they are a little bit expensive because the way we market in other European markets. I don't know. I hope that that's not going to be a problem.
Well, this is true. I know that the rates of the British pay are lower than those of the continental operators. But look at these figures here. I think I can prove that the occupancy that we give you throughout the year is probably far superior than any of the foreign operators.
I've been doing some figures. If we convert this rate into sterling.
So from taking rooms and beds away from the Germans and Scandinavians, the British claim they have all the extra capacity they need. And now a holiday at the Antias Sol Hotel will be a predominantly British affair.
Another great bonus for those prospective 6 million holidaymakers will be the extra spending money in their pockets. The peseta has fallen in value by about 80% since 1976. That's the year when the pound was last at its weakest. And in countries like Yugoslavia and Greece and Portugal, your pound will now buy you more than twice the currency that it did 5 years ago. But one leading operator feels that it will not be all blue skies. British Airways, with their Sovereign and Enterprise holidays, have decided not to sell any extra holidays for 1981 at all.
The UK package tour market increased by 12% this summer. This was due to the fact that wages, discretionary income, outpaced inflation, and people had the money for holidays. But with increases in gas, electricity, transport prices this winter, that situation is changing, and I don't think the wage awards that are coming through are likely to keep pace with inflation next year. We therefore predict a very difficult year next year on the UK package tour market. So we've taken a prudent view. We have worked on the basis of zero growth.
I would tell you that as far as summer 1980 was concerned, we had very similar economic conditions in this country. And yet 1980 was the best year that the travel industry has ever had. So we're confident that we've got our sums right.
7:40 in the evening.
But is that Air France?
But most travel agents agree that the biggest growth area is still the United States. The open skies policy on pricing has meant the keenest competition of all has been over the Atlantic. At present, British Airways, Freddie Laker and the major US airlines are all fighting to sell you a seat. And British Airways are in the lead with a £77 standby ticket.
How much would it cost then if I wanted to go on the Concorde flight to New York?
This means greater scope for the do-it-yourself holiday. But the greatest threat of all to the package operators has been the flood of cheap tickets onto the market. Airlines are using every gimmick and trick in the book to get your custom.
30th of August is a Sunday.
Yes, getting back on the Monday.
The extra holidays on offer and the choice of destinations, more far-flung than ever, will all make it harder for the holidaymaker to make up his mind. But if he's confused, for the travel agent, it's worse. Not only will they find it more difficult to know what to advise, but as the battle for the sale of cut-priced scheduled tickets grows, travel agents are beginning to get angry. 10 years ago, bucket shops, backstreet outlets for the selling of heavily discounted tickets, airline tickets, had a very dubious reputation. Today, they're emerging into the open and they're gaining respectability. Outside IATA's fold, they're able to sell up to 60% cheaper than licensed companies like Thomas Cook, who have to stick to the government's regulated price.
You've actually got your accommodation.
Accommodation's all right, yes. Or Hawaii, one way or the other.
The rules for IATA, the International Air Transporters Association, are strict. All member airlines get together once a year to fix the fares. These are rubber-stamped by each member's government and become law. The tickets can only be sold on the high street by licensed IATA agents, who have to meet stringent requirements governing security, training of staff and an insurance bond to guarantee the travel agent's credit worthiness.
And no changes in reservations will be permitted. So you've got to book and pay at the same time, and you can't change it in any way.
But airlines over the years have found it necessary to break those rules in order to fill up the seats at cheaper prices. Perhaps the major user of this technique, now facing its worst ever revenue crisis, is the national carrier British Airways. British Airways are not alone amongst the major air carriers to sell off blocks of tickets at knockdown prices for ostensibly group travellers. But these groups, once sold through the general sales agents of each airline, are quickly split up and find their way to places like this. A non-IATA, non-ABTA travel agent whose proud boast is, "Fly me, I'm the cheapest."
Yes, fine.
As self-acclaimed king of the bucket shops, Mr. Riaz Dooley is very happy to sell you a scheduled ticket from most of the world's airlines, including the Soviet Aeroflot, at up to 60% of the ABTA IATA travel agent's price. He also claims that as many as 5 million tickets a year are sold in this way. He's trying to form an association of bucket shops called, not surprisingly, NINA, or Non-IATA, Non-ABTA. But nonetheless, Mr. Dooley's enterprise is technically illegal and is breaking the CAA and IATA rules.
Thank you very much.
The whole question of bucket shop operations has been the subject of a Department of Trade report. But their findings only underline what keeps Mr. Dooley in business.
There are so many complications in the law, and since 1971, nobody has been brought to the court, and nobody has been tested. And so I don't think they could dare to prosecute anyone, because if they try to prosecute a bucket shop operator, they have to actually prosecute the airlines, because that is the source where these tickets come from.
If I, in fact, go to a legitimate travel agent, I am, of course, protected. And I think ABTA have something like in excess of £100 million of bonds.
Yes.
Now, you can't possibly offer any guarantee like that, can you?
But it just depends. You see, if I'm selling an airline ticket, that airline ticket is guaranteed itself. Say you buy an airline ticket from a bucket shop, and you had the document in your hand, the bucket shop goes bust. You are carrying a document of an airline, and they will honor that document, they will refund you the money.
There are cases there where people have actually paid their money, come to collect their ticket later, and it just hasn't been available.
Yeah, but then it actually depends on the individual people. You know, they should not part with their money unless they collect their ticket.
The war for selling cheap tickets is hotting up. And now, in an unprecedented move, ABTA and BA have formed a working party to approach the government to investigate a way for ABTA to sell BA's discounted tickets legally for the same price as the bucket shops.
London is the centre of the discounting market. It's operating out of the largest airport in the world, with more carriers coming in. And I think that as an industry, we're suffering from a lot of foreign carriers that are just taking passengers for the sake of currency. And I think it's time it was cleaned up.
I believe there's a great deal that we can do in that direction. It may mean introducing lower fares in a number of areas if we can get the agreement of some of the foreign government concerned. Of course, that is a problem in some of the European countries. But I think there's a great deal that we can do in that regard. I think we must also have a look at the way we market our fares, so that we can see if travel agents feel they've got to use bucket shops to produce groups of bookings, perhaps we can do it through professional agents.
British Airways have taken the lead with a new, cheaper European package. 13 airlines have tried to break with the cartel on price fixing, but 4 countries are still resisting any lowering of airfares. The fear is that further deregulation of prices will bring short-term gains to the passenger at the expense of the travel industry as a whole. British Airways talks with ABTA are going to be vital to stop all the infighting between the airlines over price cutting, and for the very survival of the small travel agent trying to sell more holidays on the one hand, and losing out on commercial business to the bucket shops on the other.
Whatever the outcome, 1981 will certainly be the year when more holidays than ever are available at very reasonable prices. And for those who are prepared to wait, who knows, perhaps some terrific last-minute bargains. It'll be the year that sees the lowest transatlantic fares. And 1981 could be the year that sees the start of sensible prices for the business traveller.
For the consumer at least, it looks like being a very rosy picture.
cruise holiday Russian style, an escape to the winter sunshine for the over 60s, and more of our journey through Traveller's Italy. 3 film reports in this week's Holiday. Found himself getting into the swing of things at Cala Ferrera.
Was born there, and we're going to go round first of all to the right of the harbour to the bay called Cala Marçal, and then we'll come back into the centre of Porto Colom, and you'll have time there to have a walk round, have a look at the village and have a coffee.
A change of scenery, a chance to get out and about to places of interest, is something the holiday organisers have thoughtfully included. No less than 7 excursions are arranged free of charge for all holidaymakers staying for 4 weeks or more. For day-to-day interest, the tiny resort of Cala d'Or is within walking distance of the hotel. Constitutionals to the supermarket to collect the odd bottle of medicinal tipple was a familiar sight. The brochure rightly describes Cala d'Or as a small, charming town with many shops, cafes and bars. It has a sprinkling of banks where travellers' cheques can be exchanged, money can also be transferred from home, and British cheques cashed. This is also the location of the doctor and dentist, should they be needed, health insurance being automatically included in the holiday price. Several companies offer these extended winter holidays to a number of Mediterranean resorts. In most cases, the longer you stay, the cheaper it becomes. You could spend a winter here, for instance, for around £6 a day. You've taken these long...